Hello dear friends, welcome back. This video is a sequel to my earlier video which was published 1 year ago. That video dealt with the objectives set by the vaccine developers. 1 year is a fairly long time to see the aftermath of all the research that has gone into producing the long-awaited vaccine. This is the video which I had published on 27th of October 2020 on the Weiser Owls Academy channel, and it was titled Waiting for the Miracle. And the miracle that everyone was waiting for was the COVID-19 vaccine. But as all of us know, we get what we wish for. What was that dream wish which the developers had set their eyes upon? Let us do a quick recap in the next few slides. The video which I published last year in October was based on a paper published by the British Medical Journal, the BMJ, dated 21st of October 2020. As you know, BMJ is one of the most prestigious and respected peer-reviewed medical journals. What exactly would you expect from an effective vaccine? Most people would agree that it will prevent people from getting very sick and dying. All these serious conditions such as hospital admissions and ventilators would be a thing of the past, something like a bad nightmare. And the second expectation would be that it would prevent infection from one person to another and interrupt the disease transmission cycle. First, let us know one simple fact. And that fact is that none of the trials currently underway are designed to detect a reduction in any serious outcomes such as hospital admissions, use of intensive care, or deaths. That is not the brief of the trials or of the vaccine development. Let's get that clear. Let us now talk about efficacy. Now, the three top companies which are leading the race are Moderna, Pfizer, and Janssen. And they say that they have designed their studies to detect a relative risk reduction of at least 30% in participants developing laboratory confirmed COVID-19. Sounds very technical, and the key word over here is relative risk reduction. And there is a number which looks quite good, which is 30%. For a common lay person or even doctors who do not have a career in research and who are clinicians who are waiting for a vaccine to give to their patients, very few of them really understand the full import of these three words, relative risk reduction, or which is also known as RRR or a triple R. Let us see what this number is. The best way to understand relative risk reduction is by using numbers in a hypothetical study. Let us assume there is a study of 20,000 persons, a number which is quite close to the number being used by the various pharma companies. These people would be divided into almost equal groups. One group would be called a control group, which means they would be people who do not get the benefit of the medication or the vaccine, and they'll be given instead a placebo, which is a dummy injection. The other group is the experimental group, who are people who are getting the vaccine. Suppose the control group, 300 people develop symptoms. 9,700 do not develop any symptoms, or they are not detected as diseased by whatever test is being used. In the experimental group, the number of people who were diseased at the end of the study is 100 less. In other words, it was effective on 100 people, which is very good. We can express that as an event rate, which is a percentage number. So the event rate in the control group was 3%, which is 300 people out of 10,000, and that for experimental group was 2%. The next number we have to now consider is what is the absolute risk reduction. Very easy to calculate. It's the difference between these two event rates, which is 1%. It doesn't sound very impressive, but remember, it is 100 people who have benefited. From this, we get the concept of relative risk. This is a fraction which is represented by dividing the experimental group number by the control group number. And that works out to 67%. And finally, we talk about the relative risk reduction, which is 100, that means the entire population, minus 67%. 100 minus the relative risk percentage is the relative risk reduction rate, which is 33%. All these numbers are talking about the same facts, which have been shown on the left-hand side in the boxes. It's the way they are expressed and how the numbers impact our minds. 33% is a very promising number, but in actual terms, it translates into an absolute risk reduction to an individual or to a group by only 1%. If you remember the data that was exhibited on the slides a few moments ago, the pharma companies are targeting to achieve somewhere close to 30% relative risk reduction. And as we saw, the absolute risk reduction is really a very small number. This is a common marketing gimmick. The common man, the policymaker, the politician, or even doctors who are working solely in the clinic are not aware of these intricacies. Today is the 8th of October 2021, and I'm referring to this paper which was published in the European Journal of Epidemiology. This was published on 30th September 2021, as I said just a week ago. And it is titled, "Increases in COVID-19 are unrelated to the levels of vaccination across 68 countries and across nearly 3,000 counties in the United States." Once again, increases in COVID-19 are unrelated to the levels of vaccination. Let us explore this a little more. The data set for this particular research paper was very carefully selected. It took into account the fact that full immunity may take up to 2 weeks after the second dose in order to be really effective. This analysis, however, was done after 1 month time lag on the percentage of population fully vaccinated for countries and the counties within United States. So it accounted for the 2-week time period required for development of full immunity. Let us now look at the data in the form of a bar graph. You can access the paper on the link given in the description section, but here is a selection of different countries of different sizes, of different income groups in different continents. As we said earlier, they are surveyed more than 65, nearly 68 countries. Let us start with India. The number shown over here is 182, which is the number of cases for every million of population, and this data was taken in the last 7 days before the paper was published, which means as it was presented or available on the 3rd of September 2021. The small number in yellow represents the total population which was vaccinated for the second dose. And as we saw earlier, it gave a time lag of 1 month in order to assess the numbers after immunity had set in. So India stands at 11% and 182 people or cases per 1 million population. The numbers for Israel are 62% of the population was fully vaccinated with 2 doses and a time period of 1 month had elapsed. And lo and behold, the cases for every million of population is 6,224. If you look at the figures for America, the United States of America, it is 52% of the population covered for both doses and the case rate is more than 3,000 for every million. Vietnam, which is a much smaller country with more limited resources than these two countries, United States and Israel, had only 3% of their population fully vaccinated, and their case rate was 820. By contrast, if we look at Portugal, a Western developed nation, 75% of the population had been vaccinated and their case rate was more than 1,000 per million. This provides an interesting study. Iceland was 77% vaccinated and the rate was 1,200 cases for every million of population. Now you will be surprised with these two countries, Somalia and Angola. Somalia had less than 1% population inoculated and they had just 27 cases per million. Angola too had just around 3% of the population which was inoculated and their rate of cases were just a little above Somalia, which is 31 people for every 1 million of population. Australia, another highly developed nation which had severe clampdowns and they have already covered 28% of the population, had a rate of 300 cases for every million. Sweden, another highly developed nation with 57% of the population covered at the time when this paper was published, had 568 cases. So you can see that this variation is very wide. But one thing to remember is that the higher the vaccination rate covering the percentage of population, the higher were the number of cases for every million of population. This is the real message of the paper. And should it be any different? After all, if we go back to the first few slides or the video which I had published 1 year ago, the objectives of the vaccine developers were very, very clear. So these figures should not come as a surprise to anyone whatsoever, provided you still remember what was said at that time. So what exactly was the principal finding of this research paper? The principal finding was that vaccination had no effect on new cases. To put it in medical jargon, at the country level, there was no discernible relationship between percentage of population fully vaccinated and new COVID-19 cases. The second principal finding of this research paper was that there was marginally positive association between vaccinated population and cases. To put it in more simple terms, countries with higher percentage of population that was fully vaccinated have higher COVID-19 cases for every 1 million of population. That means the greater the vaccinated population, the greater are the numbers of COVID-19 cases that were recorded in these countries. As we saw in the earlier bar graph, Israel, which is a developed country and which is a small country in size, was found to be 60% fully vaccinated. And it had the highest COVID-19 cases in the whole world for every 1 million population in the last 7 days before the paper was published. The best examples to show that there is no meaningful association between percentage of population covered by vaccination and the actual number of cases detected. The best example is comparing these two countries, which we saw in the bar graph, Portugal and Iceland. They have more than 75% of the population vaccinated and they had more cases for every million. Vietnam and South Africa were having less than 10% population vaccinated and they had fewer cases than these two countries. Let us now take a look at the data from the counties in the United States. A county in the US is a political and administrative subdivision of a state, and there are around 3,143 counties. The top 5 counties with the highest percentage of population fully vaccinated, which means anywhere between 99.9 to 84.3%. Four of these fully vaccinated counties were identified as high transmission counties. Continuing further, of the 57 counties that have been classified as low transmission counties, 15 of them have less than 20% population vaccinated. With regard to hospitalizations and deaths, we are told that even though vaccination offers protection to individuals against severe hospitalization and death, the CDC actually reported an increase among the fully vaccinated populations. Let us now look at what the paper has to say about vaccines using the messenger RNA or the mRNA technology when it comes to retaining immunity after the vaccination. Two companies, Pfizer BioNTech and Moderna, fit into this category. A substantial decline in immunity from mRNA vaccines over a period of 6 months post-immunization has been reported. In other words, after 6 months, it doesn't seem to be working at all. When it comes to vaccine efficiency, Pfizer BioNTech fares very poorly according to the authors of this paper. This company had claimed 96% efficiency during field trials. But what has been seen on the ground in reality is that they have an efficiency of barely 39%, less than half. In fact, you're better off if you fall sick and recover from COVID-19, because immunity acquired through recovery from the COVID-19 virus was much stronger. So what advice does the research paper offer to us? These two scientists say that vaccination should be done with humility and respect. It is not a panacea or a cure-all. The second thing they state is that stigmatizing and ridiculing people can do more harm than good. So please be more humble, more kind, more understanding, and do not ridicule people who are refusing to take the vaccine for any reason whatsoever. The third important point they make is that non-pharmacological prevention efforts are just as effective, and these efforts are, in principle, hygiene. So here is what the authors conclude, that we must learn to live with COVID-19 in the same way as we live with other seasonal alterations of the influenza virus. Nothing more. So friends, you must have heard or read this famous quotation a number of times. Insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. It is often attributed to Einstein, but the fact is that he never said these words. As a matter of fact, these words are taken from another publication. It is Narcotics Anonymous pamphlet, and this provides guidance to people who are addicted to substance abuse, because they keep doing the same thing over and over again and expect different results. That is truly insane. So what can we as enlightened citizens do? We have to look somewhere else, and that somewhere is homeopathy. Here is something that you already know. Immunity is a natural function, and it is activated either through a natural process, which is infection or exposure to a particular pathogen or a virus. The other way is induced immunization, which means that a person is vaccinated, or it can also be brought about by the use of a certain medicinal preparation known as a homeopathic nosode. Homeopathic nosodes are biological preparations used in homeopathic medicine to prevent disease, as also to cure disease. They are derived from an element of a disease or from a diseased tissue. They are very widely used in veterinary practice as well as in human beings. Nosodes are approved for human use in Canada. They come under Canada's Natural Health Products Regulations. There are nearly 179 distinct products which are approved for sale, and they include 82 with labels which clearly state that they can be used to prevent common and important infections. So the question that comes to mind is, can we have a nosode for COVID-19? Indeed, that research has already been done by this doctor, and his name is Dr. Rajesh Shah, who is from Mumbai. He leads a team of 30 doctors, and his clientele is from all the continents in the world and includes past President of the United States. I had the privilege of interviewing him, and that interview has been published by Pathy. You can read it on the link provided here. I interviewed Dr. Shah sometime in the month of March 2021. This was after he had completed his work on the development of the COVID-19 nosode. Let's see what exactly he did and what he found. As a matter of fact, Dr. Shah is not new to developing nosodes. He has developed more than 12 nosodes, which include ones for HIV, HPV, hepatitis C, TB, E. coli, salmonella, and many more. Dr. Rajesh Shah and his team of doctors and researchers conducted this research under the OECD and the NDCT protocols in BSL-2 labs, which included the Hafkin Institute in Bombay and Gujarat University. They developed it from 3 variants of COVID-19. You can find the details of this in the references section at the end of this video. The clinical trials were conducted at the municipality quarantine centers in Mumbai, and they had a sample size of more than 4,400 people. They were almost divided into equal halves for the experimental and the control arm of the trial. And here are the findings of Dr. Rajesh Shah and his team of researchers. COVID-19 nosode had a confirmed efficacy of 62%. You can just compare this with the efficacy of the Pfizer and BioNTech vaccine, which was mentioned by the 2 researchers whose paper we have discussed earlier. The Pfizer and BioNTech efficiency was barely 39%. What is more, that this nosode has already got the emergency approval from the Drug Controller General of India, the DCGI. Hello friends, that brings me to the end of this video, and I shall now summarize the key takeaways. We talked about a paper that has been published by an international peer-reviewed medical journal which analyzed data from 68 countries and nearly 3,000 counties of the United States. What it found was that in areas or countries where a higher percentage of population was vaccinated, quite contrary to expectation, there were more cases that were detected. The second key takeaway is that the authors suggest that we must learn to live with COVID-19 the same way as we live with seasonal influenza. The third key takeaway is that we must look at other options, and one of these options is that of homeopathic nosodes. We also saw that Dr. Rajesh Shah of Mumbai and his team of researchers have already developed this nosode and it has completed clinical trials with results which are far better than some of the vaccines in the market today. Here is the list of references that was used for making this video. So friends, thank you very much for your attention, and we shall meet once again in another video. And until then, bye bye.